Hi, I'm Danielle Cushing. I'm a registered dietitian with Flick Hospitality. Thanks for joining me. Today we're talking about carbs, net carbs, and the ketogenic diet. Here's my picture. As I mentioned, I'm a registered dietitian, I'm a self-taught home cook, and I'm a lover of sailing. So why are we talking about carbs in the ketogenic diet? A few weeks ago, I sent out an email asking people what confuses you about nutrition. I got probably 100 responses, and so many of them had to do with carbohydrates, net carbohydrates, and the ketogenic diet. So here we are. Diet trends over a decade. If you look at the ketogenic diet, you can see that it hit its peak in about 2018. It slowly built up in the decade prior to that. And then there has been a large drop since then, as we typically see with fad diets. We see a really big peak and then we see a pretty quick drop. But today we're going to talk about the ketogenic diet, all the pros and cons, what it is, how it works, and the different types. So what is the ketogenic diet? The ketogenic diet, the basics are that it's low in carbohydrates, high in fat, moderate in protein. The goal is to get your body into a state called ketosis. So the ketogenic diet is different from other low-carb diets like the Atkins diet. It's not low-carb, high protein. That's what Atkins is. This is low-carb, high-fat. It's been used in centuries. It's been used for centuries to treat specific medical conditions. In the 1800s, the ketogenic diet was commonly used to help control diabetes. In 1920, it was introduced as an effective treatment for epilepsy in children, but only when medication was not effective. The keto diet has also been tested and is used in closely monitored settings for cancer, diabetes, PCOS, and Alzheimer's. So what is ketosis? Ketosis is a metabolic state your body reaches once it's used all of its glucose stores. Glucose is the main source of energy for all the cells in your body and especially for your brain. Your brain actually uses about 120 carbohydrates per day to keep functioning. During a fast from carbs, or when very little carbs are eaten, such as in the case with the keto diet, the body will pull stored glucose from the liver and muscles. And then once that continues for 3 to 4 days and stored glucose is fully depleted, your body will start to turn to protein and fat for energy. When your body breaks down stored fat, it forms something called ketones or ketone bodies. These ketones can be used for energy. When ketones accumulate in your bloodstream, this is known as ketosis. Most people experience mild ketosis during mild fasting, like when they're sleeping overnight or when they are doing really strenuous exercise. How soon ketosis happens and the number of ketones that accumulate in your blood vary from person to person and depends on factors like body fat percentage and resting metabolic rate. This is different from ketoacidosis, which you typically see in type 1 diabetics, where ketone bodies rise in the bloodstream to dangerously high levels. That should not happen if you are a healthy individual and you are trying out the ketogenic diet. Here's a common macronutrient distribution for the ketogenic diet. As I mentioned, your body will turn to proteins once you run out of you've used up all of your usable carbohydrates, then you turn to your stored glucose, which is called glycogen, and you use that up. Your body now turns to protein stores and fat stores for energy. The keto diet promotes a moderate amount of protein. If you have too little protein, your body will break down your muscles and your lean body mass and use that for energy. But if you eat too much protein, your body will use that ingested protein for fuel, and it will prevent your body from breaking down stored fat. So for that reason, you see very low carbohydrates, very high fat, and then a moderate amount of protein. For comparison, here is the standard macronutrient distribution that the USDA, the FDA dietary guidelines, and most health and medical professionals use. I got a lot of questions about carbohydrate, fat, and protein ratios. These ratios are really personalized for everyone. They depend on your goals, and more than anything, they depend on your ability to adhere to a diet lifestyle long term. We'll talk more about that later, but just so you can see a visual comparison of what a standard macronutrient breakdown is versus a ketogenic macronutrient breakdown. There is not one standard ketogenic diet in regard to macronutrient breakdown. As you saw, there were some ranges on that slide before. However, there are a few things that are pretty standard across the board. The first being very low carbohydrates. So typically less than 20 grams up to 50 grams. Most Americans, for reference, consume 200 to 350 grams of carbohydrates per day. So the amount in 20 grams, that's like eating a very small banana, like 4 to 5 inches. In 50 grams, just so you have a good reference, that would be like a medium-sized plain bagel. Also standard in a ketogenic diet is that allowed foods are usually any fats, whether they're unsaturated or saturated, some dairy products, particularly butter and hard cheese. Other dairy products have natural milk sugar called lactose. So they typically are omitted, or just, very, very little things like milk and yogurt. And then lots of non-starchy vegetables. Foods that are typically not allowed are whole and refined grain products, added or natural sugars. So again, your lactose, fructose, which is fruit sugar, so no fruit. And then starchy vegetables. So no potatoes, corn, peas, no winter squash, and then no beans, no lentils, and no alcohol. And again, I say no, but up to 20 to 50 grams of carbohydrates. If you want to have a very small banana and a few carrots, you might already be close to your max for the day. Some other different types of ketogenic diet. Again, there's no standard, but when I use standard here, I mean that to say somebody who's following this diet 7 days a week, eating less than 20 and up to 50 grams of carbohydrates. There are a few ways that people do this. So first is called lazy keto. This refers to a style of ketogenic diet in which you are not counting calories and you're not tracking protein and fat. This is unlikely to result in ketosis. Without tracking, it's too easy to eat too much protein, which, as I mentioned, inhibits ketosis because your body will use that protein for fuel instead of using your stored fat. Dirty keto refers to a style of ketogenic diet where you're eating highly processed but keto-friendly foods, including fast foods. So think about going through the drive-thru and ordering 2 double Whoppers, hold the bun, hold the fries. This may result in ketosis, but research is pretty clear that saturated fat, if you're following a balanced diet, consuming too much saturated fat will increase your risk for chronic disease. So we have to assume that eating a diet high in saturated fat while on a ketogenic diet could also be harmful. So the recommendation, if you're following a ketogenic diet, is to still aim for healthy unsaturated fats. Lastly, clean keto does just that. The focus here is on whole, nutrient-dense foods. There's more emphasis on food quality and unsaturated over saturated fat. So think things like lean cuts of grass-fed beef, free-range eggs, wild-caught seafood, olive oil, and other vegetable oils, lots of non-starchy vegetables. Processed foods are minimized here. Next, we have the cyclical ketogenic diet. This involves rotating between a strict high-fat and low-carb keto meal plan, doing that about 5 to 6 days a week, and then doing a higher carb intake on 1 to 2 days per week. On these refeeding days, you plenish your body's depleted glucose reserves. You switch out of ketosis on these days, and then it can take a few days to get back into ketosis. So research on this method is really lacking, whether it's effective or not for weight loss and for improving risk factors for chronic disease. Lastly, we have the targeted ketogenic diet, or TKD. This is the concept of eating carbohydrates to fuel a workout. So before you engage in physical activity or exercise, you have some carbohydrates. The idea here is that you have enough glucose in your bloodstream for your body to use as energy during your workout. In theory, this may protect your body from burning its own muscle for fuel. You would then burn off that glucose while you're exercising and then still be in a ketogenic state afterward. While I was researching this, I came across a quote from, this is actually a colleague of mine. She was quoted in this article, and I love what she says here. This really refers to that sort of like lazy keto, dirty keto kind of concept. But she says the ketogenic diet may be beneficial for some people under the care of a registered dietitian or medical professional in a therapeutic setting, but cherry picking from a plan that has strict guidelines and for a scientific reason is not going to be ideal in the long run. In other words, simply adding butter to your coffee, bacon to your plate, and eliminating fruit and beans from your diet without taking your eating pattern as a whole into account is not going to have a positive impact on your health. So this really talks about the quality of your overall diet, not just looking at it and saying, oh, I need to add some fat and I'm going to cut out fruit, which is otherwise a perfectly healthy and lovely food group. So it's really means take a look at your diet as a whole. Don't just look at it in terms of I'll add some bacon and cut out fruit, that kind of thing. All right, so what are nut carbs? I did get a few questions on this. The word net carbs, or the term net carbs, it's not a regulated term. It was actually invented by food manufacturers as a marketing strategy, and it appears on some food labels to claim that a product contains less usable carbs than listed. Some carbohydrates are indigestible, and they are not absorbed. These include insoluble fibers from whole grains, fruits, and vegetables, which help provide bulk in your digestive tract. Less usable carbs also refers to sugar alcohols, which are often used in sugar-free food products. However, the effect of sugar alcohols on absorption and blood sugar can vary. Some sugar alcohols provide calories and can raise the blood sugar. So to take total carbohydrates and then subtract these quote unquote less usable carbohydrates is not an exact or reliable science. So if you are using a ketogenic diet or you're counting calories or counting carbohydrates for some reason, I would still count all of your carbohydrates. The ketogenic diet and weight loss. Research shows conflicting results for all the theories as to why the ketogenic diet promotes weight loss. The ketogenic diet has been shown to produce beneficial metabolic changes in the short term. A ketogenic diet, when followed correctly, does result in weight loss, and there are lots of other positive effects in the body. But are these positive effects achieved simply from following a ketogenic diet, or are they an effect of the weight loss itself? If you're an overweight individual and you lose weight, you'll also see improved insulin response, improved blood pressure, and improved cholesterol and triglycerides. So how does the ketogenic diet actually work for weight loss? Here are a couple of theories. One, the high fat content of the diet is really satisfying, which results in less cravings, which results in less food intake. Two, some research shows that appetite-stimulating hormones like insulin and ghrelin may decrease when following a ketogenic diet. Three, the body burns more calories on the ketogenic diet due to the metabolic impact of using ketones for fuel instead of glucose. And lastly, there's very slim research for this, but perhaps lower insulin levels in the bloodstream is related to burning fat for fuel versus using muscle. Ketogenic diet and potential pitfalls. So the keto diet is a challenge to maintain in the long term for several reasons. Strict tracking can be cumbersome, and as I mentioned, unless you're doing lazy keto, and I kind of talked about the downsides to a lazy keto, you really have to track your intake, your calories, your carbohydrates, your protein, and your fat. And that could be hard and cumbersome to do day in and day out. Also, satisfaction. Do you feel satisfied, or do you crave yogurt with berries in the summer and a crisp apple in the fall? Things that would otherwise be healthy in a well-balanced diet that does include carbohydrates. Are you satisfied without those things? Are you comfortable in social settings that involve food, or do you feel limited by a ketogenic diet? And lastly, unless you're doing ketogenic cycling, and remember the research is still limited on the effectiveness of cycling, you really cannot stray from this diet. If you don't reach ketosis, all you're doing is feeding your body a high fat and a high saturated fat diet without reaping the benefits of fat metabolism and burning fat for fuel. So you really have to get in ketosis and you have to stay there. So no cheat days. That's really something to keep in mind. Some other pitfalls: you may experience something called keto flu. This is your body withdrawing from carbohydrates. Symptoms typically set in within a few days and they last up to a week, and they include hunger, fatigue, poor mood, irritability, constipation, headaches, brain fog, things like that. Yes, you do experience weight loss on the ketogenic diet. However, in studies comparing the keto diet to other diets, adherence was the most important factor. At the 1 year mark, people who adhered to their diet, whether it was the ketogenic diet, the South Beach diet, or simply using the healthy plate method and portion sizes, weight loss was not significantly different across groups at the 1 year mark, which really just goes to show adherence is really big. Lastly, when you limit whole food groups, you're likely eliminating important nutrients like vitamins and minerals, and we'll see these on the next slide. So nutrients of concern: potassium, magnesium, which you get in plenty of fruits and vegetables, magnesium also in nuts and seeds and whole grains, fiber, of course, in fruits and vegetables and whole grains, calcium and vitamin D in dairy products. Sodium, you are likely getting less sodium. However, the average American gets, way too much sodium, so that could actually be a positive thing. And then zinc, iron, and vitamin E. Some unanswered questions moving forward: where do we need more research? So currently, a lot of the research available on the ketogenic diet is limited. Most studies have had a small number of participants. Most of them were short-term, 12 weeks or less, and a lot of them did not include control groups. So these are just some questions that we have that we still have to answer. The first one is, do health benefits extend to higher risk individuals with multiple health conditions? Do health benefits extend to the elderly? For which conditions do the benefits outweigh the risks, and vice versa? What are the long-term impacts on health from consuming saturated fat versus unsaturated fat? So if you're following a ketogenic diet and you're consuming high fat and it's all unsaturated, how is that going to affect your health from if you're consuming a high fat diet and it's all saturated? What are the long-term effects of those? Is high fat and moderate protein safe for diseases that interfere with normal protein and fat metabolism, such as kidney and liver disease? And lastly, is the keto diet too restricted for periods of rapid growth or increased nutrient requirements, such as pregnancy, breastfeeding, childhood, and adolescence? I'm going to kind of end on last couple of slides here. I talked briefly about diet adherence. I love this quote: optimizing diet adherence is the most important factor for weight loss success, and this is enhanced by regular professional contact and supportive behavior change programs. So there are a couple of things here. First, weight loss efforts can really be supported if you regularly visit a dietitian or a medical professional and work closely with them. Second, diet adherence. People ask me all the time, do you like the keto diet? Do you like intermittent fasting? Do you like counting macros? Do you like the paleo diet? I'm not personally a huge fan of any diet that cuts out large food groups. I will always say that I prefer a diet and lifestyle that's inclusive of everything. Everything in moderation, right? But I will say, I think bigger than that, if you find something that works for you, that you are happy with, you feel good about, it's working for you, you can stick to it. The most important thing is that it's something that you can stick to. So if that's the keto diet, if that's intermittent fasting, if that is South Beach, if you're doing it and you're adhering to it and you're seeing results and you feel great, I support that. And that's different for everybody. You really have to think about what diet pattern is going to fit well into your lifestyle. Some questions to ask before starting a diet of any kind. Why am I choosing this diet? What does success look like? What are my goals? What barriers do I anticipate? And how am I going to get over those barriers? Problem solve ahead of time. So those are just some questions to think about. And thank you for joining me today. Here is my email address if anybody has some follow-up questions or wants to get in touch with me or wants to suggest a future topic. I'd be happy to chat more with you. Thank you.